So much of life comes down to understanding what we cannot control while simultaneously capitalizing and making the most of the things that we can. A constant awareness that's critical to our evolution. Epictetus wrote, "We must be at once cautious and courageous. Courageous in what does not depend upon choice and cautious in what does." This idea has been shared many times in many ways over the centuries, another of which many folks have heard is the serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. But regardless of how it's said and who it's said to, the point is the same. There are things we cannot control that we must find a way to stop exerting ourselves on, stop exhausting our energy on. They are, as the saying goes, what they are. These obstacles are immovable. And rather than continue to push and push and push with all our strength and energy, our time is best suited learning to effectively navigate them. And then there exist those things that are in our control. I believe it was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle who said, and I am paraphrasing, "If something cannot be changed, stop thinking about it." The future represents anxiety. It's worrying about things that haven't happened yet. The past is essentially depressing. It's worrying about things that already happened. We can't do anything about the past or the future. All we have is now. And if it can be changed, then act now and bring about a desired result. Take that first step, create some semblance of momentum, no matter how small. But to worry about what is behind you or in front of you is actually insanity. I remember loving the simplicity and pointedness of that message. Accept it, eliminate it, or adjust yourself to it. Sometimes it helps when I think about things in metaphors, and I tend to do it often. This morning I was drinking coconut water, of all things, and I was thinking, man, it would be nice if those little pieces of coconut that float around in there weren't in there. So I had this idea, just grab a strainer, pour it through the strainer into the glass. I am leaning over the counter watching the pieces of coconut collect in the strainer, and I am just thinking, sort of zoning out, like, imagine if those were my problems, just being separated out of my life just like that. How nice it would be, captured in a little net and then, discarded, thrown away. But it didn't take me long to realize a couple of things. One, such an idea would never happen. Life will always have some obstacle to place before us. That's what life does, after all. The word is predicated upon the avoidance of death. It's a struggle and a necessary one, which leads me to the realization number 2, we want hardship. Purpose and meaning. They're derived from our willingness to overcome adversity and transform because of it. A life without struggle is a car without wheels. And sure, you might avoid the fender benders, but you are not leaving the garage. So that's a thumbs down. So I thought, okay, well, what if I slightly adjust that thinking? What if it's a subset of problems that I can remove? That's when it kind of hit me, the opportunity at hand. Not the so-called problems, but my thoughts about them. There are the real difference makers here. The negative storytelling that can be removed, pushed through the strainer again. Not novel or groundbreaking, like I said a few minutes ago. This idea has been around for thousands of years. But sometimes things land perfectly. Right moment, right time. And I knew what I needed to do was remove the worries and concerns pertaining to the events that I could not change. Yet I exhaust my energy dancing around and around with my thoughts about them. You cannot change the future. You can change right now, which ultimately becomes the future, and here is a difference. I had to, pull that back in. See, I think most of our problems are derived from anger or emotional attachment to the immovable, the unchangeable. One of my favorite sayings is, you can't change the direction of the wind, but you can always adjust your sails. When you remove the self-tormenting you have going on about your past, things you wish you did or didn't do, when you remove the concern that the future won't be exactly what you want it to be, which tends to be where I lean of the two, you are left with one thing, the present, clarity. You have officially empowered yourself because the things you allocate your energy to can be changed, can be made better or adjusted. And that's really what it's all about. You can't change the fact that someone you loved or cared about let you down, but when you dwell on it, you are now giving up the present as well. You are preventing yourself from doing what is required of you now to make your life better. You can't control the fact that your company's reducing its size and your department is being eliminated. Can't control the fact that 8% get accepted to whatever you are applying to. Can't control the fact that you will be criticized for doing the unpopular thing, the thing that you believe to be right. And I say these things not to be a downer. I actually don't think T here is anything sad about this. To the contrary, right now that you've accepted these truths, accepted this as reality, now you can move toward what's best for you. No more dwelling on the unchangeable. No more fighting unwinnable wars. No, it's time to go put yourself in position to conquer whatever mountain is next. By straining out the things that cannot be changed, you are left only with what can. You can't change your company's personnel reduction, but you can find something else, something better out. You can set the stage for a new journey. You can't increase the acceptance rate, but you can increase your value. Go above and beyond. Put yourself in position to succeed. And if you don't, their loss. Continue learning, continue growing, continue moving forward. You can't stop the world's criticism, but you can learn to toughen up emotionally. Learn to trust your intuition and decision-making. Surround yourself with people you trust who lift you. See, when you stop wasting time and energy on the wrong things, you get the right thing. Like Greg McKeown says in Essentialism, it's not what we can add, but often what we cut away. Removing the things that weigh us down, that we're dragging along with us everywhere we go. They don't need to be there. I say to myself often that I have everything I need. It's there. Some of it's materialized. Some of it exists as a seed that I need to identify and water and nurture. But it's all right, which means the problem will never be that I am incapable. It will never be that I am not good enough. No, when I am in the wrong, it's because I've forgotten to see it. I've either become consumed with the wrong things or lost faith in myself to do the right things. And knowing this has been a gift. It's been tremendous. It's helped me even during the darkest moments to reacquire what matters most. Sometimes it takes hours, sometimes days, even weeks or longer. But I get there eventually. I arrive, and so can you. You have the ability to parse out why you feel the way you do, to categorize the thoughts in your head. Can I change it? No? Okay, gone. And with all that's left begins the journey, the good stuff, the adversity, and the problems that will make you who you are. And don't misunderstand me. I am not saying it will be easy, but I am saying it will be worth it. And that's critical to understand. Your world is there to maneuver and adjust to, reshape, but its transformation depends on a laser-like focus on that which is malleable. That's saying, do what you can where you are with what you have. It will lead you to exactly where you need to be. Even if you don't trust the road before you, trust yourself to walk down. Today is not like any day I've lived before. And why should it be? This very second, there are roads to be explored that I've never before walked down. There are actions to take that I've never before taken. And ideas to bring to life that I've never before given the respect they deserve. That saying, you are always one decision away from a totally different life, rings true. You are always one realization from pulling the lever, opening the door, finding the answer you've been walking by all your life. The problem is you don't see today as today. You see it as a continuation of yesterday, the same movie with the same characters and the same rules, without even realizing you need to change the script. Emerson said, "Write it on your heart that every day is the best day in the year." Why? Because it can be. Your job is to remember that things will continue on and on and on until we give them an end. We must manually close the book on yesterday's story and start anew because we can. We often don't realize it, but we can. And that is why the morning, each new day, is so precious. It's taking the mistakes and sometimes disappointments of yesterday and transforming them into today's lessons and the opportunity to begin again. A new journey seen through a new lens, walk through a new pair of shoes, a new sense of self. So here is your reminder that the words were and are very different. That's why each sunrise transcribes into the sky the hopes and dreams of the you that you've always wanted to be. It's not a crazy formula or some secret code. It's simply untying your boat from the harbor that is yesterday and moving towards tomorrow's horizon. Someday, the things that you currently don't understand will make sense. Someday, the big things you are dealing with won't seem so big anymore. Someday, the doubts you have about yourself will be revealed as false. Someday, you'll see that the things you worry about didn't matter at all. Someday, you'll see that the road before you wasn't something you had to walk flawlessly, but rather something you had to trust and believe in. Someday, you'll look in the mirror and see that you had it in you the entire time, that there was nothing you needed or should have been hoping for. Yeah, someday that will all be true. But what about someday from the past? I remember years ago thinking, someday I would venture out into the world. Someday I'd speak my mind. Someday I would start my own business. I would surround myself with people who believed in what I believe. Someday I'd make a little more money, have a little more time to do what I love. Someday I'd have all that. And as I look around, I realize it looks a lot like someday. But guess what? As we grow, so do our somedays. It's a chase that never ends. Here is always something more. Here is always something bigger and better. And the problem is not the ambition. The problem is forgetting that in so many ways, you've dreamt of being where you stand right now. You have arrived. You are not the same person that 10 years ago was throwing some days out into the universe. No, you have grown. You have learned. You have evolved. Why does this matter? It matters because without acknowledging how far you've come, you cannot acquire the strength needed to go where you must go. When you don't feel good enough, it's often because you haven't looked over your shoulder and opened your eyes. The evidence is right there. It's hiding in plain sight. Here is proof that you've been there, that you've faced demons and conquered them, endured your battles and overcome. You did that. And at one point, not that long ago, you couldn't say that you had. You weren't yet that person. But things are different now. What you have today was once only that hopeful someday. It was a fleeting thought. It had no merit and no value. Yet you brought it to life. Look what you've done. Understand how far you've come, how you ran when you could, you walked when it was possible, you crawled when you had to, and continued on to arrive at a someday that is right now. You, my friend, are a maker of things unseen, an architect of tomorrows and someday. So don't you ever entertain the delusion that this gift suddenly stops now. Suddenly the burden is too much, the mountain is too tall. No, what you do is overcome. That is who you are. You've done it for you. You've done it for the one you love, and in some cases, the ones who didn't even understand. But you kept going, marching through the fires of hell to turn some days into right now. And I get that the road before you is uncertain. Here is no way to know exactly how life will unfold. But that's besides the point. A bird can't predict every gust of wind it's going to encounter. It spreads its wings, takes off, and adapts because it can, because it always has, because that's what it does. I am not advocating that you should have all the answers. No, I am suggesting that you trust yourself to find them, to move forward into the haze that surrounds you, to make sense of the seemingly illogical, bring about reality from the make-believe. Someday, you will have what you are aiming for, but here is to never letting a today go by without realizing that you are always living out a someday from your past. You are always arriving and leaving simultaneously, the accomplished and the student, crossing a finish line and on the starting block with another race around the corner, another chance to stretch your legs and reach for the heavens. If you ever forget that, I ask that you find it within yourself to look over your shoulder, to remember what you once asked for, and to appreciate the journey that you have undertaken. You did that. Now onward you go. Go. You have more somedays to bring to life. I was thinking this morning about a conversation I had with my grandfather. This particular example, I was living in LA at the time. My grandmother and my grandfather, they flew in from Boston. And you know, I think we were doing some family stuff, but I wanted to hang out with my friends down the street, right? I wanted to go to Kyle's house, play Star Wars, whatever it was we were doing. And that felt like the world to me. Like I didn't want to miss out on that, because I felt like I'd lose it if I wasn't there. I'd lose something. And I remember him taking me from the kitchen to the living room, being like, "You have to relax." He's like, "That stuff, I promise you, will always be there. The fun, the escape, the metaphorical going to Kyle's house will always be there. You have to do what's right for you. And then when you need that, it's there." It was almost like all the nuance and the detail, it's reacquired. And why I am bringing this up, and it's a little bit of a pivot, but I've seen throughout my life, right, personally, this sort of loss aversion. Like I mentioned a few days ago, where you don't want to leave a bad situation because you fear that the very basic boxes that you've checked, you can't get them back, right? It's like you can have a job you are not satisfied with. You are unfulfilled. Here is nothing great about it. You've lost your sense of self, your purpose. But you are getting a paycheck, right? Or, at least you have some direction in the day or in your life. You can say who you are. Here is some identity there. Here is some very basic boxes checked. You are not happy, but the basic boxes are checked. And what you fear is if you leave in pursuit of something different, maybe you can't check those boxes again, right? Or you are in a relationship and it's like it's not right. And when you are courting, it's not right. But here is very basic boxes that are checked, right? You are not alone. You are with someone. Here is some predictability in your life. Like it would be tough to lose those things. And so that's really the essence of what I want to say, right? Having the self-belief and the self-trust, because that's really what it comes down to understanding that if you move into the unknown, you can recreate those things. You can check those basic boxes off. But if you don't have the courage to move out of that situation, you'll be shackled to a world that's not really meant for you. Right? So like the job thing, and by the way, I always worry about saying this because there are people that love their jobs. I am never ever knocking a 9 to -5. Like it's just my thing, right? That was for me. I felt so constrained, and I am just I love to be creating and sort of out on the fringes. That's just like what motivates me. That's not how everyone works. So I don't want this to be interpreted as me bashing a 9 to -5. It's just my story. But I realized that I could have walked away, come back in a year after living in, Thailand, and things would have been exactly the same when I got back, right? I could have got a similar job. I put a fun way to check off those same boxes, right? Those foundational things, they're reacquired. Just like the relationship thing, right? It's like if it's not right for you, here is 8 billion people in the world. 8 billion. You think one of those doesn't share your value system? One of those you can't have fun with, hang out with, relax, enjoy yourself, improve your life? Of course you can. But you are worried about losing the very basics, the very basic boxes that you've checked. And it's like you have to have the courage and self-belief to walk away from those things. You have to believe in yourself enough to know that you can recreate a reality, right? With a similar foundation, but with the things on top of that make you happy, make you feel alive. Like I am prone to do, I found a random internet quote today. It says, "I am learning to love the sound of my feet walking away from things that are not meant for me." And it's that simple, right? You can never get where you are going if you are shackled to the things that don't move you, right? If you are staying in a place of discontent. And the message is simple, right? Believe in yourself, trust yourself. Here is nothing in your life that you can't reacquire or rebuild. But what you'll miss if you stay in that place is the opportunity, the upside, the people that will change your life, the places that you've never seen, the experiences, the journeys that make life worth living. The upside is just too high. There is a quote attributed to Seneca that states, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Meaning, it's in pursuing the difficult thing that we obtain meaning, recognition, that we prove ourselves. But prove ourselves to whom? This is the same Seneca who famously stated that we suffer more in imagination than we do in reality, that he is most powerful who has power over himself. And that's one of the beautiful things about Stoicism. It makes us ask a very simple but often overlooked question. Who's really the adversary here? Who's the opposition we're dealing with as we fight our battles? What is it that must be transformed? Is it the outside world, or the way our eyes view the outside world? What's really holding us back? The circumstances, or our own personal thoughts about the circumstances? I think this is where we misunderstand the challenges before us. I want to delve into this power of perspective to explain that we are the gatekeepers between ourselves and our ideal lives, and very often we do a good job of ensuring that gate stays closed. We sabotage our own goals, our own dreams, our own happiness, while simultaneously pointing the finger at a million externalities. See, when we look at the difficulties of life, and there is no doubt that life can be a very difficult thing, it's easy to look at the world as this binary playing field, right, me versus the world. And in fact, we often visualize the world as the enemy, pushing back against us as if its motives were counter to ours. But so many of these narratives, these stories, they actually say nothing about the outside world. And when we look deeper, it becomes apparent that they actually say a whole lot more about us. It's the one viewing that gets to decipher what the surface circumstance means. And so all narratives are reflections of the observer. Jim Rohn used to tell a story about two brothers who had an alcoholic father. He'd come home drunk, he'd abuse his sons. They had a terrible childhood. And as they each grew up and had families of their own, their paths kind of diverged, right? One became abusive, and the other was kind and loving and caring. And when confronted, the now abusive brother stated, "Well, look, how can you blame me? Don't you see how I was raised?" But the kind, loving, and caring brother stated, "Of course, I am like this. I could never put my family through what I went through as a child." Same circumstances, different lenses, interpretations, which means different real-world results. And the idea here is to emphasize how one of the most important abilities a human being possesses is the ability to interpret the world around him. I think of us as subjects navigating a world of objects, as though the things around us don't have meaning until we place meaning upon them. That's what humans do, create narratives out of objects. And that often overlooked, seemingly insignificant ability places a lot of power in our hands. Very rarely is it what we see, it's what we think and what we do about what we see. You ever hang out with people that just tend to be happy, upbeat, positive energy? I have a very good friend like that, where his first inclination is always to find the positive in moments where I've sort of trained myself to pause, take a second, sift through the emotion, uncover the value in a tough situation, refocus, and take a strategic step forward. I look over at him and he's already arrived there, right? He's been there for 3 minutes, right? Eliminated the negativity. It's his first instinct. He's the metaphorical kid hopping around in puddles, whistling at the top of his lungs while everyone else is hiding out from the rain, or at least trying to find the courage to run out onto the street with them. Then there are people who seem to always find the negative. It doesn't really matter what the situation is. Happiness is fleeting, only to reveal the negativity that never seems to go away, right? The kind of person that if they won the lottery, their first thought might be, "Oh no, but what if I lose it all?" Both examples are people projecting themselves onto the world around them. The same way that smoke covers and consumes an entire room, it's not the room that's the culprit. Here is another example from Jim Rohn. In a Jim Rohn talk, he was making a similar point, and this is all from a collection of speeches he has on Audible. Comparing humans to oranges, which is probably not a comparison you've made recently, but he said T here is consistency to an orange, and that it can be filled with one thing. When you squeeze an orange juice is coming out, period. It will never be apple juice or grape juice. It will only emit what it has inside, which is orange juice. And while here is the connection, when life pressures us, challenges us, or metaphorically squeezes us, we only emit the emotions that are contained and available, that are alive and well within us. If there is no jealousy contained in our thinking, we're not going to project jealousy out into the world. If there is no hatred within us, we will not project hatred onto others. Why is that powerful? It's powerful because, again, it's one of the most important things you can do. Certainly one of the most important things I've learned to do is to take that finger-pointing blame at the outside world, slowly turn it around, and point it back at myself and ask, what thoughts, what emotions, what ideas am I letting live inside my head that's altering the narrative, the story I am telling about myself and the world that I live in? And while one might think, well, that's uncomfortable, that's unfair, a little extreme, why should I point at myself? It's not my fault. I would challenge you, at least for the sake of the next few minutes, to see such a change as empowering, as your advantage, as the bridge from where you are to where you want to be. See, if you always have feelings of, let's say, jealousy around a particular person, that feeling in your stomach like, oh, they have it all, they're ahead, like they live how I want to live, they're this and that, and I kind of hate them for it, you are naively giving the external world the power. You are saying, I feel the way I do because of that out there, some cosmic injustice. You are powerless because you are neglecting your personal agency as a factor. But when you turn that finger around and say, I only feel this way because I am allowing myself to, then you can ask the question so many never think to ask. Why? Why do I feel this way? Which lights a path to, how can I fix it? See, the key to a better life is realizing you don't have to be in the passenger seat, pointing at and blaming the driver, complaining about the road being taken. No, you can get into the driver's seat. You can take the wheel. You can take control, inherit responsibility. And T here is more at stake. T here is greater vulnerability. But the upside is unfathomable. And I find myself thinking all the time, man, people are blaming the wrong things. They're shifting blame to the wrong adversaries, the real villain. Here is not the driver or the road or the weather. The real villain is the voice in your head pleading with you not to take the wheel, pleading with you to ride shotgun and complain as the world passes you by. And of course, it makes sense to qualify that with the inevitability that there are some things placed upon us that are just bigger than us, that we can't control. You can make a list, however long you want to. Natural disasters, decisions and actions of others, health problems. We don't often get to choose the landscape. So, as the Stoics would say, understand that. Understand what you can't control and what you can. Because the beauty is that you can control how you navigate that landscape. And that is power. That is what makes the difference. See, the two brothers I mentioned a few moments earlier, same landscape, different navigational tactics, different views of what it all meant. One took the wheel, and one did not. So that's the Seneca quote that states, no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. Well, it's perfectly clear, as far as I am concerned. The question is not whether or not to face adversity. I think we all understand that. What I hope we take from today is a better understanding of what the true adversity is, a better understanding of the fact that in front of us, there is always an answer, a key to every lock. Some people just don't think to look. They're so busy peering around every corner for external enemies and scapegoats that they don't give themselves permission to succeed. Maybe unfortunate, but it's true. You can hit the bullseye over and over again, but if it's the wrong target, it won't do much for you. You might as well have missed by 50 feet. And I think that is what we overlook. You can't always fix the outside world. You can't change the unchangeable. But you can always change yourself. You can always fix you. As Tolstoy said, everyone wants to change the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. You are capable of being both your greatest adversary and ally. So choose wisely, because the world around you will do nothing more than respond accordingly to your decision. Just go. Sure, things will feel strange at first, abstract at first, wrong at first. It's incredibly difficult to separate from the past. It's hard to detach from the deeply rooted biological whispering of, hey, at least you knew what to expect back there. But that whispering has preservation in mind, not happiness. And at some point, we need to stop preserving that which is not ideal. So go. The walls that once existed, they'll crumble. And this will be startling at first, shocking at first, intimidating at first. It's incredibly difficult to watch foundational structures crumble around us, especially when you know you are the one that lit the fuse. It's hard to walk away from the faint murmur stating, "Hey, this was your home, how dare you leave it?" But those words, they have status quo in mind, not growth. And home is an idea you take with you. It's no set of parameters, just go. The stories you told yourself, the narratives you thought were forever, will prove to be nothing more than the end of an underwhelming chapter. This will feel abrupt at first, unfair at first, will leave you deeply unsatisfied at first. It's incredibly difficult to realize that happily ever afters aren't linear, they're cyclic. It's hard to walk away from the voices pleading with you not to turn the page, stating that because their realities will remain the same, so must yours. But those aren't the characters with whom you'll emerge victorious. Some movies must be recast, the setting reimagined, the hero reinvented. And so it should be known that your greatest strength is the little steps that you are capable of taking, the little decisions you are capable of making. Remember, safety is not safe when it keeps you from what you need. And the wrong nows have a tendency to evolve into the wrong forevers. The small concessions, well, they become the big mistakes. So if it's a sign you are hoping for, let this be it. If T here is a time you are waiting for, let now be that time. If it's someday you are dependent upon, let today be that day. As doing nothing is in fact a decision, but only one of many. One path laid out before you. One single grain of sand where the edge of today's world touches the shores of tomorrow's. Sometimes it's about the ability to stand up, face the horizon, and just go. Go. Because it's only upon going that you realize you are capable of the journey. You finally see in yourself the strength you've longed for. It's in going that you realized yesterday's situation wasn't even really the problem. It was your fear of the unknown, of leaving that situation. It was living with the devil you knew instead of potentially having to face the devil you didn't. That's what happened to your wings. They just felt safer tucked away. But it's in going that we acquire perspective. The tragedies, the devastation, the things that kept us awake at night, they really weren't that bad. But how are we to know? When you build walls around yourself, what's within them becomes your entire world. It's in going that you create yourself. And while everything you need is already beating in your chest, the great unknown before you is the water to that seed, the key to that door. What you fear is exactly what you need. And so the beautiful dance through life goes on. Not beautiful because of its elegance, it's rarely that. But beautiful because of its promise, its malleability. Beautiful because we get to move without answers in order to find answers. Beautiful because what we become is directly proportional to what we're willing to endure. And that means that the universe doesn't judge, doesn't know us by our failures or our mistakes, but by our courage. Our courage to face all of these things and move forward anyway, to relentlessly explore the resilience of the human spirit, an infinite light in an otherwise finite world, a bridge that is built beneath our feet in real time. What a weight off of our shoulders to know this. We don't have to get it right. We just have to step out the door, trusting that we will pick up enough pieces to put together something meaningful. And then the world, it opens up just like that. Leave the old, embrace the new, you think to yourself. Well, yeah, of course. The best things in life are always simple. Always have been, always will be. We just imagine them to be difficult. We have a knack for making simple decisions into complex matrices of cause and effect, pros and cons, wins and losses. We learn to think for years until we finally come to the brilliant realization that happiness, that meaning, that a life well lived comes when we think less, ready, fire, aim. There is no perfect path, just an adjusted course, an endless series of change, of learning. That falling is just a road sign indicating where we need to go next. You can't plan for that. You can't chart a course that doesn't exist. No, you leave who you were yesterday behind, and you set sail. They'll ask you, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And you'll think, who knows, but not here. It couldn't be here. It must be somewhere evolved where pieces of the world shaped your outlook and became the armor that you now wear. New game, new rules, new expectations, new people, new places. And what really changed? Well, how you view yourself. It's funny how it all works, how things come together when we look over our shoulders, like it was meant to be, as if this had to be the way things are. No, you could very easily have stayed dreaming, looking out that window, wishing you could leave, hoping for answers that didn't exist. And so the complex now feels as simple as we meant it to. We move forward not knowing, but trusting. And we look back with the sense of understanding and a confidence that was built over time. In the game of life, there are people who go and people who stay, people who build and people who don't. And I am not saying everything will be perfect or everything will immediately snap into place. How could I? But what I am saying is that in moving forward, we pull back the curtain on the opportunity that is available to us. We move from the physical limitations of the bodies we walk around in and towards the infinite power of the mind that powers them. We become who we were always meant to be. How do we know what that is? Well, not until we look over our shoulders, of course. So go. Go make your mistakes. Go learn your lessons. Feel your moments of pain and your moments of bliss, your times of doubt and your times of certainty. Because in doing so, you will have done the very thing so few people get to do with their limited time on this planet. Truly live. So go. Just go. Sometimes it's what we don't say that echoes the loudest. What we don't do that has the greatest consequences. Where we don't go but ultimately gets us lost. I remember as a teenager applying to college. I was working on the admissions essay, was brainstorming with my grandmother, talking over possible topics and approaches. And she read me this quote, that's sometimes attributed to Mark Twain, but that's beside the point. The quote states, 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than by the ones you did do. So throw off the bowlines, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, discover. I thought this was the perfect bridge to the next chapter of my life, the latest horizon, the newest adventure. I thought it was incredible, and it was. It was exactly what I needed. And so on to that next adventure, I went. But here is the thing, as life unfolded, this equation somehow transformed from exploration and dreaming and discovery into the question, well, what am I supposed to do? Somehow, without my paying attention, life turned into a checklist, a question I couldn't get wrong, a test I needed to make sure I didn't fail. It's amazing how quickly we forget the infinite breadth of life, because we're focusing on the dotted line before us, the one we're supposed to walk. Sometimes we're so fixated on what the expectation is that we don't ask ourselves where these expectations are coming from. Who is so significant and wise that they know what's best for you to a greater extent than you do? See how that's an important question, and also one you can lose in your periphery as you follow that dotted line before you. When you have a destination in mind, hopes, dreams, ambitions, well, that's an adventure. When someone else has a destination in mind for you, whether this authority is imaginary or not, that's obedience. And sometimes the greatest disservice we can do to ourselves is to not stop and think, to not stop and ask ourselves where we're going and why. Do you remember when you were a child and you got into trouble, right? Sometimes you'd get sent to your room. And for me, this was agony. When it was punishment, I wanted to be anywhere but confined within those walls. I hated being sent to my room. And then finally, the door would open. My parents would say, "Eddie, you come out now." I'd go outside, play basketball for a little bit, and then oftentimes I'd find myself right back in my room happy. You know, playing with my toys, whatever I was doing, not a care in the world. And it's like, what changed? Nothing. But the context. Same me, same room, same toys, same whatever I was doing. It was, however, no longer a punishment. And I think this realization is worth exploring. We may not realize it. We may not even be able to articulate it, But I think we long for control over our lives. We long to walk our own path. And in this situation, the path led me right back to where I was. Sometimes, though, the path leads us in the opposite direction, far away to distant worlds. The end destination is not as important as the fact that we chose it, that we asked ourselves why, and that we believe in the answer and immerse ourselves in it. So when Mark Twain talks about the things that we don't do holding more weight in our hearts, it's because those things we tend to skip over are often the very things that breathe life into our souls. We'll go to school to get good grades, to get a 9 to -5, to get a promotion, to get a mortgage on a home. But the audacity to open that photography studio, the nerve to think you could rent a van and travel the country, the delusion to think you could start that routine that will get you in the physical shape you've always dreamed of. See, we're lucky and fortunate to have the things that we have. The quality of life we lead now far exceeds those that came before us. Life is convenient, incredibly convenient. But what is convenience if it comes at the expense of purpose, of meaning in life? Because that's what steers the ship. A crisis of meaning ultimately mitigates everything else. There is no exploration without meaning, and without exploration, tomorrow becomes a repetition of today, not an evolution of today. And what's incredible, truly incredible, is that our purpose can be rediscovered, our paths redefined. How? By having a long conversation with, you guessed it, yourself. By putting the phone in another room. By disconnecting the Wi-Fi and spending time with you. Something along the lines of, dear self, what matters to me in this world? Where am I going right now? Is where I am going right now aligned with what matters to me in this world? And sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes no, great. But what we have now is a foundation to work off of, an awareness that should be celebrated that you created. It's so easy to walk through life and never have that conversation. It's so easy to sleepwalk to the tune of someone else's song, the beat of other people's drums. But when you open your eyes, you see the correlation between your thoughts and your actions in your reality. You realize that when you wake up, that tendency to ask yourself what you have to do today, to reflect on your problems, those questions you assumed were normal that you never gave much thought to, well, now you'll see you can dismantle that notion. Now you'll see that if you can ask yourself what you have to do, you can just as easily ask yourself what you want to do, what you get to do, what life is inviting you to do. If you can reflect on your problems, you are just as capable of reflecting on the opportunity at your fingertips. If you can spend time dwelling on whether you are walking the obligatory dotted line that's been laid out in front of you, you are just as capable of redrawing that line and allowing it to pull you into a new dimension. Listen again. 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than by the ones you did do. So throw off the bowlines, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, discover. Explore, but for you. Wander down those paths that have for so long piqued your curiosity. Try things you once felt like other people were entitled to, but you'd never given yourself permission. Be that for yourself, because no one will come up to you and randomly give you that green light. Dream, because without building your castles in the air, as Thoreau calls them, you live your entire life on the ground. You'll never hit targets that you don't create. And sure, there'll be a time that only you see the destination. Great, that's life. But with each step forward, as it becomes more real for you, it will make sense to others as well. Trust each step like it is in and of itself a miracle, and you'll find in time that that's exactly what each step was. And lastly, discover. Discover who you are, what you are capable of becoming. As Emerson said, to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. To forge your own path, build your own life, stay true to your own heart is courage. So sail away because you have the ability, because you are strong enough, and because the story you are about to write doesn't continue on until you turn the page on today's chapter. Many of life's failures are people who didn't realize how close they were to success when they gave up. Thomas Edison, a quote I go to when I've lost my why, when my frustration over the lack of a particular result overshadows everything. I don't think we realize how transformative these moments are. When confronted by them, or presented with two options, give up or emerge better than we were, it's not intuitive, right? It's not normal to think, I know this is hard, but hey, I am one adjustment away from getting it right, one move away from uncovering momentum. That's why in such moments, I rely on others to remind me, and it's why I remind you now, to reiterate how small a push is required to simply get things moving, to remind you that you do want this. It does mean something to you. And you know what? These are the moments you'll look back on with a tear in your eye, a smile on your face, and you'll be grateful you pushed through. These moments, the darkest of nights, the lowest of lows, when we're lost, we're stuck, unsure, they are the ones that matter. So shake it off. See, the difference, the reason so many people turn around, is because they don't know the secret I am about to tell you. The very same secret those before have passed on to me. You don't need to do anything but not stop. And if that seems too obvious or cliché, let me explain to you that it's in going that we're forced to find solutions. We're forced to become more. It's incredibly hard to stop an object in motion. But the question is, can you move forward when you don't have the answers, when you are tired, when what you've been looking for is nowhere to be found? Can you imagine at that moment what the other side will be like? Looking back on your journey, knowing that where others stopped, you hung on. Where the cost was too much for so many, you laid it all on the line. These are the decisions you have to make now. So don't listen to that voice rationalizing, begging you to take a step down or return to the normalcy of yesterday. Let this message resonate. Hear me. Embrace the fact that you are always one move away from recapturing momentum, from finding yourself again. It's there. Everything you need is there. Have the patience to find it, the patience to do what you do best. Find a way. I'll never forget listening to Jim Rohn. I was taking a walk in the middle of the day. I needed to get out, decompress, rethink, realign, and this message came through my headphones. He said, "We must all suffer from one of two pains, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The difference is discipline weighs ounces while regret weighs tons." And I needed that. I needed that because sometimes we forget why, in the midst of the day-to-day, the trials and tribulations of life, we endure. And here is a strange dichotomy that exists because you know you can't measure discomfort that hasn't arrived yet. You can identify regret that hasn't materialized yet. In a way, you have to. You have to somehow make that tangible. You have to know that sacrifices of today deliver you from the anguish of, I wish, or if only, or maybe I could have. I've heard it said that humans' ability to delay gratification is what makes us so unique, incredible even. But that doesn't mean it comes easy. So as I walked, I became reacquainted with the trust that I had in myself, in the future, in the steps I was taking. It wasn't that I'd reached some grand finale, but that I gave myself permission to stop constantly expecting one, worrying when things didn't go as planned, feeling disgusted with myself when I fell short. This is, after all, part of a process. And if one stays the course, builds a foundation of discipline to guide them towards what they believe in, things will evolve. We feel uncertain because new things don't have a precedent, at least not a personal one. And that feeling of, I know I wish I knew, or had some predictability, it's real, it's common. But if minimizing regret is what means the most, then it also means that we must have the discipline to walk steadfast into the unpredictability of tomorrow. A long-term, sustained discipline. In one of my favorite interviews, Bronnie Ware, who wrote the top 5 regrets of the dying, was talking about surrender, and how she mentioned in her book Letting Go, and I asked her, can you explain that? What's the angle? Because the way I look at life, here is always something you can do. You can always improve your situation somehow. And she basically said it's not about what you can control, what you can do. It's about putting yourself in position to live the life you want to live, and then letting go of that which you cannot control. It's about not worrying over external forces as you walk your path, because all you can do in life is walk your path. And that became the marker or the question, am I walking my path right? And I look at it like this. First, a vision gives you direction. Purpose keeps you excited, injects meaning into life. Second, discipline keeps you moving, becomes the tiny steps that transport you through your pursuit of meaning. And third, trust in the process that you are here to give everything you have to give, and then the rest, as Brani says, must be surrendered. But the reason I bring this up is because all of it fits together like a puzzle, like 3 pillars of a Parthenon. When people reach out to me all the time, they're upset that they're not as disciplined as they'd like to be. And they're listening to the speeches, they're watching the videos, they're absorbing the content, trying to improve, but nothing seems to get the engine going. And I am wondering, what is your North Star? What are you aiming for? Because as far as I am concerned, it's impossible to be disciplined if you don't have a reason. When Jim Rohn states that the pain is in ounces now, well, T here is an implicit compared to what being asked, right? Compared to that top of the mountain that you'd presumably miss out on. So if the mountaintop's not defined, you are on a fool's errand. It's why I had so much trouble with my old career, for example. It's hard to be disciplined. T here is no buy-in on the purpose, right? Using my previous metaphor, it's little steps, sure, but towards what? If you don't know, it's only practical then to look around and ask yourself, why am I taking them? Why not go drink with my friends? Why not stream this series on Netflix until 4 a.m.? Why not skip the workout? You can listen to people on YouTube scream at you to do more and be more and try harder all day, but without that peace, it will not get you very far. A vision, the discipline to pursue it, and a trust in the process. And you could say the same with someone who might have a clear vision, a dream, a perfect idea of what they want, but never take action, right? The discipline never materializes, makes the endeavor just as meaningless. Things don't change until you take that big picture, that vision, and you break it down into little things you can do every day. That's it. And isn't that amazing? The greatest, most influential people, from the friends and family that inspire us to the greatest athletes and entertainers to our greatest thinkers, creators, world leaders, all they do is a handful of things consistently every day in the direction of something that is meaningful to them. A process that has been talked about since the beginning of time. The compound effect is what Darren Hardy calls it. That breakthrough is huge for me. The realization that I don't need to leap any mountain, I just need to ascend one tiny rock at a time. And that is not a superhuman ability. That is a single decision. So here the question isn't, can you be more disciplined? Of course you can. The question is, which few things are most meaningful to you? Which will you be focusing on every day so that they expand and inject value into you and the world? And then lastly, there is trust. Sometimes the most difficult. Seeing the unseen, maintaining confidence in that which is unknown. An incredibly challenging expectation in an instantaneous world. A world where things are immediate. Feedback is immediate. Messages are sent across the planet instantaneously. Goods and services arrive within hours. We have forgotten patience because it is disintegrating before our very eyes. We are a society of now. But the best things in life, they take time. They require that we hold up our end of the bargain and that we trust life will fall into place. Belief in a process that will come to mean more than anything that arrives in 30 seconds ever could. A vision, the discipline to pursue it, and a trust in the process. So perhaps you are overdue for your midday walk. Your little excursion into the soul to ask yourself, what is it you are moving towards? Why are you doing what you are doing? Does it mean something? And if not, perhaps some adjustment is in order. Perhaps you've lost sight of that North Star that lights up our lives and illuminates the way. Take solace in the fact that life is not as serious as we make it out to be. We don't live in a world of right and wrong, good and bad, yes and no, but a continuum. An opportunity to seek out and find the beautiful ups and the meaningful downs, to set our sights on the horizons that matter. See, when the little things feel too complex or burdensome, it's because the big things are misaligned. And that is a powerful idea to grasp. It's never that life is too difficult. It's that we have closed our eyes. So don't be fooled by those selling you reality as some problem, some obligation that must be dealt with. No, today is the greatest gift of your lifetime, and the same will be true every day moving forward. And to echo Jim Rohn, absolutely. It is a gift comprised of sacrifice, discomfort along the way. But that's a small price to pay for entry to the show, for the ability to embrace the mystery and embark upon the adventure. When you are pointed to the right North Star, well, the road feels less treacherous on your feet, the hills less strenuous on your legs. What we often deem to be a lack of preparedness, ability, strength, well, might just be a lack of alignment. So adjust, because this world, flexible and limitless, invites you to do just that. It invites you to explore until you've uncovered your vision, to pursue it like nothing else matters, to sidestep the obstacles, invert the setbacks, and lastly, to find hope when there appears to be none, to set your sails, walk your path, run your race, and surrender to that which is beyond your control. And you'll find that with a vision, with discipline, with trust in the process, there is no situation or circumstance outside the scope of what's possible for you. The little E on the car dashboard reminds me that I am pointed east as I sit at the red light, perpendicular to Ocean Avenue, staring out at the water. This is it. This is as far as I can go. There are no more streets or towns or cities. There can't be any more stops along the way, just miles and miles of ocean. It's interesting for me to think about all the changes I've made up to now. Growing up outside of Los Angeles, on the opposite coast, relocating again and again. Sometimes very targeted, methodical moves, sometimes just for the sake of change. But always moving, always going. T here is a saying that wherever you go, you take yourself with you, right? You can change the scenario, the circumstances, the surroundings, but ultimately, you can never outrun yourself. You are accompanying you on whatever journey awaits. And it's often not until you run out of real estate, until T here is no more road or options, that you are forced to look in the mirror and acknowledge that it is you who must change. It is you who must evolve and become that person that you need you to become. And that can be a scary thing. After all, anyone can get in a car and head east. Anyone can point the compass away from the chaos of now, move away from their demons. But how many of us can find the strength to look those demons in the eye? How many of us can make ourselves bigger than what attempts to weigh us down? All of us can, but how many of us do? Are we running to something or from something? Because there is a difference, and that difference is not small. One of my favorite speakers, Jim Rohn, when referencing our journeys through life, our push to make more of ourselves, he essentially said, "It's not what you get at the other end. It's who you become along the way." And I think, like everyone, I've forgotten that from time to time over the years. Forgotten that value is not simply in going, but in becoming, in the courageous little steps that accumulate over time. Forgotten that the external world might inspire or excite, that change might invigorate the soul, that the road untraveled might remind me of life's beauty. But these externalities are only as valuable as you allow them to be. There are only opportunities if you decide them to be. So change inspires, but will you let it inspire you to do that thing you know you need to do but are terrified of doing? And that road, it might remind you of life's beauty, but will you let that reminder be your invitation to share your own beauty with the world, whatever that means for you? Can you be that vulnerable? Can you take that leap in the story of your becoming? See, it is incredibly easy to look out at the world and pinpoint its flaws. All those little problems and imperfections, they tend to jump out at us. But can you identify what you yourself need? Can you be courageous enough to ask those questions of yourself? What matters to me? What does a meaningful life look like to me? Where am I falling short? That is a conversation that needs to be had. And it needs to be had often. And otherwise we will drive and drive and drive until we hit water and are forced to ask that question. Because it's interesting that when we don't pause and make the changes that need to be made, life has a way of ensuring that we do. But when it's mandated by life, it tends to be a lot messier, a lot more chaotic. At least then when we make the decision ourselves. But either way, we cannot run forever. Either way, we must step into a new pair of shoes and learn to walk confidently with them into the night. There are plenty of little mantras floating around out there, little pieces of advice, and perhaps it's best for us to weigh them each individually, see what meets our needs and fits our criteria. After all, life is not one size fits all. But one of my favorite among these is to do one single thing that scares you every day. And I'll tell you why. Because when we become conditioned to turning our backs on all the uncomfortable things in life, we diminish our prospects of a better tomorrow. It's synonymous with the seed refusing water, saying no to the very thing it needs most. And what should be noted here, one of the reasons it's so dangerous is that saying no is incredibly subtle. It's not some big event or explosion. T here is no fireworks show that occurs every time you walk away from what you need. No, it goes unnoticed. And again, one of the greatest challenges is quantifying that which we don't do. How do you measure that thing you walked away from? Well, unfortunately, you can't. At least not until you are staring out at the Atlantic with nowhere to run, no more escaping on the agenda. You don't know until you are forced to pick the pieces up and make something of them. And I say this so that hopefully it can ignite that spark in your soul that you need most, whether you previously recognized it or not. I say this to remind you how much bigger you are than your problem, how you have the ability to transform all that exists around you when you transform yourself. T here is a certain inevitability associated with how we see ourselves, and I believe this to be true at both the personal and the societal level. Anyone can look in the mirror and see the past, where they've gone wrong, how inadequate and ill-prepared they are. But the courage to look in the mirror and see strength, to both identify and understand one's shortcomings, but know that you have the power to do something about it. To know that the times you fell or didn't make the cut, they don't indicate that the endeavor was all for naught or unequivocally wrong. No, there is so much good tied into your pursuit, so much beauty and courage ingrained in your soul. But imagine a life where you no longer run from the gaps, but close them. Imagine finding it in yourself to begin that hero's journey. Where you used to run to protect yourself, now you take the offensive to grow yourself. Where you used to avoid the possibility of failure, now you chase the possibility of victory. You can have that if you want to. You can be that if you choose to. And sure, you may never be able to outrun yourself, but you can always adapt yourself to be that person you always needed you to be. Sometimes we just need the reminder that we are strong enough. We do have what it takes, and that the thing that hurts us most in the short term not only saves us pain in the long term, but it becomes what we live. It is where we find our meaning. And so perhaps this ocean before me is not there to remind me of my constraints, that I have no road left, but a reminder of just how often we measure using the wrong measure. Perhaps I needed to see again that it's not where I end up, but who I become along the way. That when the internal self steps into the shoes it's been too intimidated to wear, that when the world within then becomes the beacon you need it to be, the roads and the stops along the way, they matter a little bit less than the eyes that process it all, that decide what it means, how it will be utilized in the game of life. Everyone wants to be the best, the top, the 1%, or as the saying goes, everyone wants to be a beast until it's time to do what beasts do. See, what life has revealed and continues to emphasize is that our most vital decisions, they present themselves in the dark of night, the chaos of the battle. They show up amidst our discomfort. We know these moments, the ones that seek to stop us in our tracks and turn us around. They are what must be prepared for. They are the gateway to excellence. So let's look at the big picture for a minute. Life in totality. Because consistently doing the simple, easy things, they're important. Consistency of that which is simple is the foundation. It's what we build the structure upon. But it is far from everything. Moving right along, we have the difficult things that push us to be more, that show us who we are, that hurt, that test us. The temporary storms, they are the armor we come to wear. They're what prepares us to endure the trials and tribulations of life, like a muscle that must be grown and developed. But the difficult things are far from everything. Because lastly, we have our defining moments, the moments that put it all together. When the sky feels like it's falling, the body feels like it's failing, the mind feels like it's dwindling. presenting the question, will you do the hard thing when you feel like you can't do the hard thing? It's doing what's difficult when the situation around you is screaming at the top of its lungs. You've gone too far. You've separated from normal. You are wandering into something that can no longer be deemed predictable or safe. See, running is hard, but running when you are tired, when you didn't get a great sleep last night, you don't feel good, when you are busy, when your when you have things to do, when you are in the midst of your workout and your lungs are screaming for air. The cloud of pain is hovering over you as you make your way forward for no other reason than you told yourself you would. That's not hard. That's transformative. Going to the gym is hard, but going to the gym when you don't want to, when you don't even feel like stepping into the car, when your mind is trying to rationalize a day off, when you are asking yourself what the point was to begin with, that's not hard. That's transformative. Growing your business is hard, but growing your business when you've experienced a monumental letdown, when you went all in and were left empty-handed, when you were chewed up and spit back out, yet you showed up, kept your eyes locked in on that win, that's not hard. That is transformative. See, these monumental moments, the ones that break so many of us, that we've all come face to face with over the course of our lives, they're not about easy versus hard. They're about doing the hard thing when it seems as though you cannot do the hard thing. The world is saying no. Your body is saying no. That chirping in your head is saying no. Can you separate yourself from that hurt and that anger and that disappointment? Can you segment the negativity, knowing that you will do what you can to remedy the situation, but that life's curveballs can't stop you from moving forward, for the simple reason that you won't let them? When life gets hard, you have to be harder. The one who gets bolder. You have to learn to surprise yourself. Here is what I believe to be the goal. It's a pinnacle. It's what I aspire to become. When life puts me through hell, to dig deep and find the emotional IQ, the awareness to know that right now is the invitation I've been longing for, my chance to level. See, you might be wondering what brought this concept to the forefront of my mind. And well, it was one of life's inevitable setbacks. And I had to look in the mirror and say, I am not going to think about the technical issues that just cost me thousands of dollars and thousands of hours of my time. No, I am going to 1, learn, but put parameters in place so it never happens again. And 2, find the opportunity. See, when we build back, we tend to build back stronger. Clean slate, new lease on life. Where can I be better than I was? Where can I pinpoint and capitalize on the value I once walked right by? When we adopt this mentality, we become unstoppable. Someone on the outside looking in might say it's over the top, and it is, but so are the things that I want. They might say it's not that simple. Correct. Running away from our problems is simple. I am not about that life. They might say it's impossible to do all the time, to think that way every day. And perhaps so. But if we bow our heads and retreat every time life isn't perfect, we'll never attempt anything. I am not aiming for perfection. I am aiming for progress. Those who aim for perfection tend to spend the entirety of their lives doing exactly that. Aiming, planning, speculating, wanting more for yourself. It means receiving more rejection from the world. It means elongated valleys of despair. Some will stop at easy. Let them. Some will stop at hard. Great. To each their own. But if one dares to push further, to trudge forth into the night, they will be tasked with doing the hard thing when the circumstances are devastating. They will be asked not just to sail the ship, but to sail it through the storm. To not just build the tower, but to build as the skies open up, the wind blows and the ground shakes. That will be the difference. That has always been the difference. So, what will you do when the time arises? Who will you choose to become? In his play Measure for Measure, Shakespeare wrote in 1603 a line that I think adequately sums up the reason so many of us fall short of what we are capable of becoming. He wrote, "Our doubts are traitors and make us lose the good we oft might win by fearing to attempt." Our greatest tragedies and regrets in life tend not to be our mistakes. They're not when we try and we falter. No, the vast majority of the time, they arise when we do not even attempt, because fear has prevented that very first step. It's when we have that perpetual light shined on all that can go wrong, while the upside and the opportunities sit in the dark, just out of frame. And in a world where you get what you focus on, to only focus on the worst possible outcome is a death sentence. It's debilitating. The way I see it, there are a million ways to improve something. There are infinite roads and paths and possibilities. None are certain. But what is here is the interesting thing, though. The only certainty, the only thing that is for sure, is that if you don't go, you will not arrive. One will never finish what they do not start. Listen to this quote from Thoreau. It's from his book Walden, which he wrote after about 2 years and 2 months of living in the woods by Walden Pond in Concord, Massachusetts. He wrote, "I learned this at least by my experiment, that if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. He will put some things behind. We pass an invisible boundary. New, universal and more liberal laws will begin to establish themselves around and within him, or the old laws be expanded and interpreted in his favor." In other words, the world does not dictate. It reacts. It becomes what we decide it will be. And I was thinking about this recently. Have you ever thought about the utility of water? Just water, and how it is obviously essential for life. Specifically, humans can't live longer than about 3 days without it. Yet we can also very easily drown in too much of it. The same thing that's required for life can easily take life away. It all depends on how it's being utilized. And so when I think about this, my mind goes to Shakespeare's message on our doubts making us traitors if we let them, or Thoreau's passage about moving with conviction towards the things that matter, towards our dreams. And what I see is an intentional restructuring of the world around us. The idea that life can work for us or work against us. It can be our headwind or our tailwind, the reason we stay or the reason we leave. And who decides that? You decide. That I often think back to my first creative project. Once I took the entrepreneurial route years and years back. I referred to the project as quiet desperation, in reference to actually another Thoreau quote. Most men lead lives of quiet desperation. Because I realized around that time how easily that could become reality, and decided to do something about it. For me, it was a huge step out of the routine and the cycle. I finally asked myself who I was living for. Where did I lose myself? Or had I simply never bothered to find myself? And I don't know the answer to that. But I know at the time, if you ask me, Eddie, what are you truly excited about? It'd probably be a lot easier for me to tell you about the things I didn't like, I was afraid of, that I was unhappy with. That's what I saw. That's what I focused on. And that's the point. Until then, I was immersed in Thoreau's dreaded common hours of thinking, and so used to it that I thought nothing of it. There was no next step or other side. And then I arrived at that moment. That moment I hope we all get to at some point, realizing here is very little to lose and everything to gain. And it drives me crazy how hard we have to fight for this understanding. How much easier life would be if it was intuitive. But it's not. It's a journey, a muscle that must be built. And so we must build. We have to prove to ourselves that what's big and intimidating can be broken down. That what we visualize can materialize. That will always be true. But we need to make ourselves believe it. Identity is scripted. Confidence is earned, not once, but every day. And we must understand the pain associated with staying far exceeds the pain associated with moving towards our dreams. The former is destructive, and the latter is what we need. They are not the same. So, being as we choose what we see, how about a commitment? Not a commitment to be perfect. Not a commitment to have all the answers or avoid mistakes. No, how about a commitment to allow ourselves the courage to be imperfect? A commitment to go when we don't have the answers. A commitment to see mistakes as a necessity instead of a catastrophe. In this world of subjectivity, make sure that movie playing in your head illuminates the opportunity, not the loss. So that when you fall, the inclination isn't to run from the bad, but to look for the good. Because I promise you, you will get what you look for. That perspective will alter your actions, which will alter how you see yourself, which will alter the trajectory of your life. Let's leave that mediocrity, that common our thinking, behind as we head for higher ground. Commonality being average, it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. It seems simpler, sure. It seems easier. But the ones immersed in that world, they're depriving themselves of the answers they desperately need. They're refusing the hand that is perpetually reaching out. When we turn our backs on the extraordinary, it is because fear has gripped the wheel, and we are now passengers along for the ride. But you have the ability to be more. You have the ability to move towards what matters to you, to take the steps one at a time, bear the discomfort 1 second at a time, acclimate 1 day at a time. This is a journey dependent entirely on you and your willingness to step out the front door, to finally see the things you previously disregarded. And when your eyes open, you'll see that you can be your ally or your enemy. This can be the beginning of a new chapter, or the continuation of a current one. This is your story. And by the way, that doesn't mean others wouldn't love to make it theirs, wouldn't love to tell you that life is beyond your control, wouldn't love for you to think that you are dependent on the outside world, that you need them and what they are willing to provide for you. But no, this is about you understanding that the first steps start with you, your decision, that your autonomy is a strength and a chance to begin again, change the way you think, and what you get changes. It's not magic, but practical evolution. When we force ourselves to see the positive, when we look for a way, we find. That's reality changing because you decided that it should. And that's what the power of perception is, nothing more than unlocking the gate that was previously placed before you. Here is no better time than this very moment to walk through it and rewrite your story as it should be written. Here is an idea that's changed my life. Right, as has been attributed to Nelson Mandela, the saying goes, everything is impossible until it's done. We view impossibility as this abstract, scary concept, implying that something cannot happen, that it's not reality. It's outside the scope of what we are capable of doing or creating. And we feel that when we're in the middle of life's trials and tribulations, and we feel that push-pull, we feel that when we're working on something and we feel unvalidated, we feel like everything's in vain. Like we're putting in time and energy, where is life rewarding us? Where is that, the top of the mountain, the medal? W here is the applause. I cannot find it. When we feel that, the solution seems impossible, nothing short of impossible. And what I want to do is kind of debunk that idea and show you how that abstract notion of something that just seems too big, it just seems insurmountable, how you can take that and break it down into very, very doable, manageable daily tasks that change your life and your relationship with the world. Here is, I want to give you 2 examples of books that I've read, and I've talked about them a little bit on the channel before. But I don't think in this context of how human beings have done impossible, quote-unquote, impossible things, and not even realized it until they stepped outside, right? Until they crossed some finish line, some abstract marker, or looked back and went, oh my God! And the rest of the world went, oh my God, that's not realistic. And what's incredible is, as the impossible was being done, the steps to get there were so small and so commonplace that the people carrying out the impossible acts didn't even understand and know they were just putting one foot in front of the other. And so both stories are related to war, and I feel like when you take sort of the darkest elements of mankind, stuff that's inconceivable to a lot of us, and you see how people were able to get through those situations, it puts things into perspective, right? We're not dodging bullets here in our own world, and that idea, it helps ground us, right? So the first is Laura Hillenbrand's book Unbroken, and Louis Zamperini is the main character in that book. It's one of my favorite books. And he is a track star that ultimately goes to fight in the war, and his plane is shot down. He goes to a Japanese internment camp and just endures hell, mental and physical torture. He's beaten. He's starved. He's isolated, just goes through a mental hell from camp to camp to camp, day by day, sometimes thinking he would die, really not knowing, malnourished, watching people around him die, get beaten, like it's an environment that it would be hard for us to comprehend. And one part really struck me in this story. It's when at the end of the war, the prisoners are set free, and he's talking to someone about the trip and looks back and says, "I'd rather die than do that again." Like, I couldn't do that again. It's quote-unquote impossible, and I don't think he used that word, but that's the implication, right? T here is just no way. And it's like as even as the reader, as you look back, you are like, T here is not something a human being can endure. It just seems like too much when you look at it holistically. But what the prisoners did was take it one day at a time. One awful, horrific, grueling, unfathomable day at a time for years. And then when the point finally came, they looked back and realized that what they had done was unbelievable, one day at a time. And it was heart-wrenching. It was so powerful to have him look back on his own journey and say, "That's impose. Like I could never do that again. I would rather die than do that again." That's how hard it was. That's how just traumatic it was. Yet here he was, standing tall. Another example is in the book Lone Survivor, right? Mark Luttrell is a Navy SEAL, and he's in Afghanistan with 3 other Navy SEALs who are killed in action. And T here is a point where he is by himself, bit through his tongue. He had a broken back. He was mangled. And he crawls 7 miles through the mountains in Afghanistan while being shot at and taking enemy fire. And the portrayal of just slowly moving your body forward, inch by inch, to safety again is something that's unfathomable. That's impossible. That's not something that we can comprehend. I don't even think it's something he can comprehend, right? And I am certainly not going to speak for a Navy SEAL. The idea is that it's just unfathomable. But one step at a time, one movement at a time, you can create a different reality. So when you take these examples and pull them back down to earth, Viktor Frankl in his book talks about how suffering is like a gas that will fill any room, right? It's like everyone's suffering consumes them to some extent. And so, you may not be at war, but we are all fighting our own battles. And when we are in the midst of the difficult times, it's easy to not think about getting to tomorrow, but think about surviving the whole war, metaphorical war, right? Not just crawling 1 foot, but looking at the 7-mile marker and thinking it's outrageous. So much of life is convincing yourself to move forward 1 step, and it's such a trivial thing to discuss. It's not sexy, it's not on its face heroic or exciting. It's the mundane compounded over time. And we need to remember it most when it's hardest to understand. And I talk about it all the time, right? That, quote, "Those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music." It is very difficult to stay fixated on a result that is not there. It's one of the most challenging things about changing your life in the world around you. Dreaming is putting things on earth that are not yet on earth. That takes mental fortitude. Because each step you take, you have to remind yourself that it's for something, that it means something. When you desperately want applause, because look, it's human. You exert yourself, you exhaust enough energy. Any rational person is going to say, "Why the hell have the stars not aligned yet? I don't understand what I need to do." That's what's interesting. People don't talk about the fact that it makes more sense to quit than to carry on. Unlike to the rational brain, it makes sense that we would say, "No more," right? I want to deal with the world that I am in, not one that isn't built yet. But it's why we celebrate. We celebrate those times that we move forward anyway, that we had the vision to see the unseen and do what so few people can do. That's what makes life beautiful. That's what makes human beings beautiful. We see life through stories. Well, the ones that can write and craft narratives that have not been heard or watched or explored. That's magic, no? I talk about the evolution of insanity. I wrote about this years ago, and it continues to be one of the most important things I think that I've written. You know, this idea, if you take a woman who leaves her everyday life, right, for example, and she has this passion, this sense of purpose, and she wants to breathe life into it. So she leaves her ordinary world and she starts building. And she becomes obsessed with this idea. And people around her, by the way, who know her as what she was and what she did, right? They know her based on what they saw yesterday. They say this is weird, but she's locked in. And she gets up and she makes it her focus in life. And she continues forward and continues forward. And nothing happens. And people point to her. They say, look at her, wasting her time, right? She had it all before. This is crazy. And she continues and continues and builds and adjusts and throws her understandings and her knowledge and her experiences against the wall. And when they shatter, she picks them up and builds again and again and again. And people say she's illusional, she's insane, she has lost her mind. But she hangs. She dances without the music long enough to get there, to wherever there is. She gets there. And now the perceptions are different. Now it's exciting. Now she's not insane to the world around her. Now she's propped up on a pedestal. Now people want what she has. They want to understand how to build what she built. How can we make what she made? How can we do what she did, right? They call her lucky. And she says, "Number, for you to call me lucky is insane." What she did was build the impossible with very ordinary, very mundane steps. Never losing faith and remembering, and this is the key concept, remembering that all those little trivial steps mean something. And when she steps outside, because we all get there, we'll step outside and look back and reflect. We'll look back on the impossible that we built, on the magic we created. The thing we need to remember is that magic is manufactured with very real, practical components of life. Simple decisions. It's like the human brain is so much more than the sum of its parts, right? You can take any element, physically of the human brain, and it doesn't seem that extraordinary. We can't even explain or understand it. But you put it together, and we have something that transcends the biology and the physicality that we look at under a microscope. It doesn't make sense. We haven't quite figured it out, right? All those little pieces become something meaningful. And my point is, we all have our own journey. We're all fighting our own battle. We all are going to get to a point, because it's human and in a way it's required, where we look around and we question ourselves. And we question the process. And we don't know if it's worth it. We forget why we started. We can't see the finish line because it's not there yet. And we'll only see it if we continue to uphold that vision in our heads. That's when it's important to remember what impossible is and how it's made. And every simple decision to step forward is crafting the impossible. I had a call with someone today. Very successful individual, right? Very skilled and respected in his field. Brilliant platform. Great communicator. Just an all-around impressive human being, right? Says, yeah, but I want to be one step further. I am getting frustrated. I don't know, what can I do to get there? And it's like I've been in that spot. In fact, I find myself there a lot. And I think it's incredible that you are looking out and asking, what pivots can I make? What adjustments can I make? But sometimes what you don't do is more important than what you do. And what you shouldn't do is lose sight of how much you've built. What you shouldn't do is forget that one step at a time creates miracles. That you are well on your way to where you want to be. Never let impatience trump the big picture. Never compromise who you are or what you've built. Life is often about simply moving forward. Sometimes it's trivial, sometimes mundane, and that's what truly hurts. Most people don't quit because of a major traumatic event. They quit because the little things don't reveal their value. Amidst the chaos of daily life, it can be incredibly hard to remember what you are building. Each small step is a brick, and together they form the foundation of something extraordinary. Believe in the process, the melody, and most importantly, in yourself. There will come a moment when you arrive when there becomes a tangible place. It's different for everyone, but when it happens, you'll exhale, look back, and feel gratitude. Remember that feeling when your journey seems unclear. Think of all the times you could have given up but didn't. Those decisions to persevere matter. They have meaning, and the most important thing is knowing they mean something. When doubt creeps in, remind yourself of that truth. So here is to taking one more step forward in building the impossible. What if I told you that you already know what needs to be done? You just need to position yourself to do it. Unlearn the rules that confine you and the ideas that hold you back. Often, we're in pursuit of a magical solution, a single answer to solve all our problems. But the reality is, everything you need is already within you. You just need to clear the clutter, simplify, and walk your path with clarity. Einstein once said, "Everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid." This wisdom highlights the importance of embracing who we truly are. Our worth isn't something we find, it's something we acknowledge and accept. In today's world, many people feel lost because they're trying to succeed by the wrong standards. They're fish trying to climb trees, trapped by learned helplessness and misjudged potential. Instead of focusing on arbitrary metrics, look inward. You are equipped with the skills, characteristics, and abilities to succeed in your unique way. Recognize your strengths, declutter your mind, and embrace the path you are meant to take. Are you living in your own arena or playing in someone else's? How loyal are you to your instincts? Do you follow what you know is right, or do you feel obligated to pursue what others expect? When was the last time you truly listened to yourself? Tim Grover, in his book Relentless, uses a powerful metaphor. A lion doesn't need to be taught to be a lion. It simply is. It hunts, roams, and lives life the only way it knows how. But if you capture a lion and place it in a zoo, it behaves differently, lazily, moving sluggishly, confined to a space far smaller than it was meant to rule. To onlookers, this lion may seem ordinary, but its nature hasn't changed. Release it from the cage, and it will return to being what it was born to be. Perhaps the same is true for you. Here is a spark inside you waiting to ignite, a place where your true nature meets the right environment. It's the moment when doubts like, "I am not good enough," or "the odds are impossible," fade away, and you step fully into your potential. Free yourself from the cages that hold you back, expectations, fear, and self-doubt, and claim your territory, your life, your empire. We often feel incomplete, as though we're missing some crucial piece that will finally make us whole. But it's not about acquiring something new, it's about letting go of what no longer serves you. Simplify your life. Remove the people, habits, and thoughts that drain your energy and add no value. Success isn't found in immediate validation or accolades. It's in the small, consistent steps that, as Clement Stone said, swing the biggest door. The answers you seek aren't hidden, they're already in front of you. They're in the seemingly trivial moments of your daily life. To see them, you must cultivate awareness. Ask yourself, what do I truly want out of life? What's important to me? What's something I love doing so much that I can commit to it long term, even during the inevitable challenges? As Jordan Peterson advises, choose your sacrifice. A meaningful life isn't easy, but it's worth it. The journey shapes you into something great. Viktor Frankl reminds us that a person's primary concern isn't pleasure or avoiding pain, but finding meaning in life. When you align yourself with your purpose, you transcend the mundane and embrace the infinite possibilities of existence. This journey isn't without its struggles. Even the lion doesn't succeed every time it hunts, but it doesn't quit, it persists, because that's what it means to be a lion. You must do the same. Rise after every setback, not because it's easy, but because it's who you are. If you are unsure of your purpose, that's not a problem, that's the beauty of life. You are here to explore, to discover, to create. You don't need someone to save you. You need an environment where you can thrive. Find the terrain that allows you to be your truest self and share your unique gifts with the world. You already have everything you need. The challenge isn't finding yourself, it's building yourself. Look inward. Nurture your strengths and let your potential shine. This isn't a game of acquisition, it's a game of courage. Do you have the courage to embrace who you truly are and follow your instincts into the unknown? Start today. Stop waiting for the perfect moment or the missing piece. You are ready now. Plant the seeds of success and let them grow. Turn off the doubts, step out of your cage, and step into the life you were meant to live. The world is waiting for you to amaze yourself with what you are capable of. Sometimes, what we need most isn't what we think we need. It's not the break we've been waiting for or the answers we've been desperately seeking. Sometimes, all we need are 3 simple words. Don't give up. Don't turn back now. I know you may feel like you want to. The right path, the meaningful one, demands everything from us. It's often exhausting, disheartening, and feels like it takes more than we have to give. But this is your reminder. One day you'll look back at this moment, and you'll realize that the best thing you ever did was to keep moving forward. Despite the circumstances, despite the pain, you kept putting one foot in front of the other, chasing what truly matters. I remember when I first moved to South Florida, exploring the area and stumbling upon a small, strange park between a parking lot and the beach. I sat on a bench facing the ocean and just stared. I saw people who seemed happy and fulfilled, like they had it all together. I watched the vast, powerful ocean and the plains overhead, each with its direction and purpose. Yet, in that moment, I'd never felt more alone. Looking back, I see those moments of doubt and despair as gifts. They were necessary to my growth, moments that forced me to confront myself and what I truly needed. Life has a way of teaching us through emptiness and struggle. It's in feeling trapped and overwhelmed that we learn there is always a way forward if we're willing to find it. Sometimes, the hardest thing to do is to take the difficult, meaningful path over the easy, meaningless one. But here is the truth. What feels easy now can lead to regret later, a difficult, heart-wrenching forever. Lance Armstrong once said, "Pain is temporary. It may last a minute, or an hour, or a day, or even a year, but eventually it will subside and something else will take its place. If I quit, however, it lasts forever." In our darkest moments, we must choose to stand up, even when it hurts, so we can walk, run, and eventually sprint toward what matters. The idea that our lives are broken or incomplete is an illusion. The world isn't perfect. It's chaotic and full of struggles. We all fight battles we don't fully understand. You are not broke. You are human, perfectly imperfect, and equipped with everything you need to take the next step. Even great figures like Thomas Jefferson faced struggles. Despite debilitating migraines, he did his most important work in the mornings, knowing he might be incapacitated by noon. Everyone is fighting their own battles, redirecting discomfort into opportunity and pain into progress. The challenges we face are not reflections of our inadequacies, but part of life's design, a treacherous hero's journey filled with unknowns, villains, and unanswered questions. Life isn't about being flawless or having everything figured out. It's about rising after failure, learning from setbacks, and finding the courage to move forward. You won't always feel strong, and that's okay. Your strength lies in your ability to rise, again and again, no matter how many times you fall. So go forward into the unknown. Transform fear into courage, doubt into strength. Go because there is no better time or place than now. When life feels overwhelming, remember what you've already overcome, the battles you've fought, and the strength you've shown. Smile because you are exactly where you need to be, building meaning and purpose step by step. You don't need miracles or monumental feats. All you need is to take one step forward and believe in yourself. Piece by piece, you'll build something extraordinary. Run if you can, crawl if you must, but always find a way. Deep down, the pieces you need are already within you. One day, as you look back, you'll see this as the greatest decision you ever made. To keep going. Hold the vision, but trust the process. This idea should act as our North Star as we navigate through life. It suggests believing in a goal while recognizing that its manifestation will likely be unpredictable and challenging. Life's path rarely unfolds as we envision it. To me, the most demanding aspect of personal growth and building meaningful things is the mandatory dance with time. Patience is woven into the process, filling the empty spaces that often breed doubt and disbelief when life gives us nothing to react to. In those moments, our minds conjure monsters that seem all too real. Reflecting on the past decade of my life, the hardest moments were often the result of feeling like I wasn't moving fast enough. The narrative in my head compared my progress to others, magnifying the gap between where I was and where I wanted to be. That discomfort lingered in my consciousness as I chipped away at my goals. I began to wonder, how can I maintain my ambition while reducing the anxiety of not having arrived yet? Holding the vision while improving my relationship with the process seemed essential. Life is a game of perpetual growth. There will always be another finish line to cross, higher numbers to achieve, and greater mountains to climb. While this creates incredible opportunities, it also poses risks. Without the right perspective, the endless pursuit can feel overwhelming. If we can't appreciate the journey as it unfolds, we risk being perpetually unfulfilled, always chasing what's next. That's why it's crucial to be our greatest allies, supporting ourselves along the way. When I shared this thought with a friend, his perspective was illuminating. He told me that the feeling of always wanting more is what drives success. He referenced great achievers like Michael Jordan, who were never satisfied because happiness and greatness rarely coexist. While I understood his point, I wasn't entirely satisfied. I wanted to find a way to pursue my goals with tenacity while fostering trust in the process. A turning point came during a conversation with my father. As we sat at the kitchen table discussing my social media analytics, he made an offhand remark comparing my progress to the S&P 500, a steady upward trend despite occasional dips. His comment struck a chord. It reminded me of the core lesson from The Intelligent Investor. Invest in what you believe in and remove emotion from the equation. When the stock market dips, an intelligent investor doesn't panic, they buy more. The same principle applies to life. Success is not defined by the events of a single day, but by the overall trajectory. Some days, success is imperceptible small steps forward that may not seem like progress at all. Growth doesn't always look like we expect, but each step is part of a larger pattern. This perspective has freed me from the delusion that growth must always be visible. It has allowed me to immerse myself in the present moment and embrace the journey, even when it feels like I am standing still. Life is a balancing act between extremes. We must keep our heads in the clouds, dreaming of what's possible, while staying grounded in the present. Every step we take, no matter how small, is a testament to our strength. The beauty of the journey lies in its infinite possibilities. There are no wrong paths, only lessons and experiences that shape our destination. Waiting takes many forms. It's not always about inaction. Sometimes it's about moving so slowly that we deceive ourselves into thinking we're progressing, but life is too short for complacency. The extraordinary is within reach, if we have the courage to extend our hands and take it. Looking back, the most transformative moments of my life weren't about external achievements, but about internal shifts, realizing my own potential, demanding more of myself, and seeing the world differently. It's these mental transformations that make all the difference. They remind us that life's greatest opportunities often go unnoticed until we pause and look around. Regret doesn't always stem from outright refusals. It's often the result of subtle neglect, failing to see the possibilities right in front of us. As we face life's challenges, it's important to remember that we've survived every hardship so far. We've been acquiring the tools and resilience to move forward. The real question is whether we're ready to take the leap to demand more of ourselves and to embrace the discomfort of growth. The future we want is always there, waiting for us to reach out and claim it. In the end, life unfolds on our terms, whether we realize it or not. Doing nothing is a choice to accept the status quo. But if we're willing to tear down what no longer serves us and take bold steps toward what we truly want, we'll find that the effort was worth it. When we finally stand in alignment with our true selves, we'll look back with gratitude, knowing that it was all within reach and we were brave enough to take it.